years and divided it into sort of one whole. This distribution tells us what the characteristics are of the suppliers who have the real supplier business in this portion. And so first thing that jumps out at you is the decline in the blue bar. These firms own less of the supplier sector than they did in the beginning, and dramatically less. Well, who are they? Those are your traditional American-owned, American-located suppliers. That's where the real decreases have taken place. And again, you wonder about who's going bankrupt. You know, that's that line. And who are they supplying? For the most part, they're supplying the domestic automakers who are losing market share and therefore need less. So one might expect imported parts to really be taking their place. For the most part, they're not. For the most part, we're replacing these domestic suppliers with these yellow lines. And what are those? Well, those are suppliers that are internationally owned, but they're producing right in the United States. And that's really what we're seeing is we're, for the most part, keeping our domestic part production the same. It's just a question of who owns the plant. And that's what's taking place. And the reason behind it is always economics. And in this case, a good deal of that comes from the dollar exchange rate with other currencies worldwide. And in the interest of time, I'm just going to skip ahead and call it a day right here. We'll have a chance for a discussion afterwards. I'll be happy to take any question then or right now. And also, I put my email up there. Please always feel free. If I can answer any questions or look anything up for you, I will be more than happy to do so. Jack, thank you very much for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Terrific presentation. Thank you very much. As a rough point, I know there are things you have to add. The decline in employment, which is striking, is juxtaposed against production that is exactly the same. So that what is happening is that the automobile industry overall has become more productive in the United States. Is that correct?
It has become more.
There are things you have to add. But you're doing the same for less employment.
Yeah, it's a number of things. Imports do play a role in that, maybe not as much as one might expect. When you look at the numbers, they are impacting things. Productivity is absolutely crucial in that. And it's also, the overall number has declined, and it's also the distribution that is changing. As a result of the UAW Big Three agreements that were signed last year, we can expect more of those jobs to be from, this second tier, which means they're paying less. And we're basically treating a lot of jobs that were at one time automaker jobs as if they were supplier jobs. So that's another problem that we have. You pointed out the overall reduction, which is striking. The other tough portion of that is that reduction is paired with the fact that those who do remain and keep their jobs are likely long-term to be earning less money.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Dan, we're going to turn this over to you.
Great. Thank you. And good morning. I think I'm going to speak from here. I've been asked to comment on the current status of the Korean auto industry, and to do so in approximately 25 minutes. There's a lot to cover, and so this is somewhat like trying to take a drink out of a fire hose. But I've compiled some information that I hope you find of use and interest to the overriding issue for today's program. And first, to maximize the time, I want to begin by making some preliminary comments. Come on. I first want to recognize the... Oh, wait a minute. This may actually be going faster than I thought.
Go ahead.
It's animated, so I'm not sure how. Yeah.
In fact, while we're waiting, I basically wanted to comment and recognize Korean Economic Institute, first of all, for holding this program. I'm honored to contribute, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate. I'm a lawyer. I practiced for 30 years in Detroit, serving companies in the automotive industry, and for the last 14 years with an emphasis on Korea. I've traveled to Korea extensively, just returned on my latest trip from last week. Okay, next slide, please. If you need to know anything else about our firm or me, we have a website. Next slide. In terms of presentation goals, what I hope to do during my time is to share some objective, substantive overview of the Korean auto industry and briefly discuss the past, present, and future. Take basically a different approach, the opposite approach that Bernard took, who started globally and worked down to the United States. I want to start in Korea and work my way towards the globalized industry that we see today. I also want to make it clear up front that I want to leave the KORUS FTA to the panel. And my comments are intended really to add light and not any heat to a very important issue that faces both of our countries. Is there any way that we can accelerate this? Very briefly, I want to make a couple of observations about Korea because they tie into where this presentation is going. First of all, Korea has been known, of course, as the hermit kingdom, but it's been thrust into a new world order. It's transitioning to a globalized industry and a globalized world. Human relations is very critical in Korea, and it's a very sophisticated and very preserved culture. It's very, very important for non-Koreans to take the time and interest in trying to understand what Korea is all about. In my experience, Koreans are survivors. They have a most remarkable history. And the promising transformation that's going on in the Korean auto industry now is an example of not only steps taken to survive, but to thrive in a globalized industry.
Change the timing settings.
Okay, well, is there anything I can do? I'll just quickly go through it. First of all, quick clarifications. We're talking about a globalized industry, and there are so many companies in the industry that are companies without borders now. So in terms of identifying the Korean auto industry, it reminds me of GM DAT that has a significant presence in Korea now, and it'll be increasingly significant. Is that part of the Korean industry? Hyundai Motors, of course, has localized to the United States and many other places. It's got a very large manufacturing plant in Montgomery, Alabama. That clearly is part of the Korean industry, but it's also part of the globalized industry. The Korean auto industry is preparing and positioning itself for what lies ahead, but it's also important to distinguish the different challenges that face Korean OEMs and Korean suppliers. From an OEM standpoint, Korea's manufacturers are taking several steps to position themselves for what lies ahead. 3 such examples are strategic alliances, transplants, and relationships with new suppliers, for example, in the United States. From a supplier standpoint, however, the challenges are different. Historically, Korean suppliers, like many other suppliers, have been, the business model has been a vertical supply chain. In the tribal structure, they were essentially contract manufacturers building parts to spec. And also there was a history of poor financing among some of the supply chain. The supplier's challenge is to try to turn that vertical supply chain to a horizontal supply chain by creating independent business models, which should feature forecasting, which I'll get to in just a moment, and deciding for themselves whether a particular contract or opportunity from an OEM is a good business opportunity or not. Innovative technology is absolutely critical. The slide that Bernard put up about the supplier table of pain is lessened only when suppliers create innovative technology and take it to OEMs so that they can help. It gives them more leverage to negotiate the economic realities of increasing raw materials prices that are drowning some of the suppliers worldwide. And then, of course, global supply capabilities. As more global platform vehicles are prepared, suppliers need to be in a position to supply those products on a much broader geographic basis.